Good morning and welcome once again to another Meet the Church, when we pose 10 questions to a member of Dale Street Evangelical Church. And answering those 10 questions this morning is the one and only Mr. James Butterfield. So, 10 questions for us to find out a little bit more about James. Over to you, JB.
Hello. So a little bit about me as a child and growing up and stuff. I was born too many years ago in Halifax, and when I was quite little, we moved to Doncaster, and certainly my earliest memories of being in Doncaster. I've got an older brother, Tim, who many of you will know, and a younger sister, Joanna, and obviously you'll know my mum and dad. Well, I guess when I think back to life as a child in Doncaster, I think at the time I would have said, everything was good. We never really wanted. If there's anything we ever wanted or needed, it was always provided for us. We didn't go without. Now, when I look back to those times, I can see how actually there were lots of times when actually we really didn't have very much as a family. And I guess money was really tight, but yet throughout that, we were always given what we wanted and what we needed. So I guess we're quite fortunate in that sense. Holidays, certainly as a younger child, we always went camping, mainly to Bridlington, and then it was very exciting one year when we went we had a change and we went to Great Yarmouth, and this was amazing. This was like an exotic holiday. It wasn't in Bridlington, much as I love Bridlington, but we didn't really do anything much more exciting than that. We didn't go like abroad or anything until I was kind of well into my teens. Other than that, my dad worked away. He had lots of jobs over the years, but certainly for the bulk of it, it was working away kind of during the week and only at home at weekends, and so it was quite a kind of like two stages to the household life. There was the midweek stage where I guess we had a bit of free reign, and there was just my mum who worked full time and was looking after us all. And then there was the weekend when Dad was there, and we had to be a little bit better behaved, and it was slightly stricter and things like that. Yeah, so that was kind of growing up. So my earliest memories of church, I think having always gone to church, from being a baby, obviously going along with mum and dad, it's hard to kind of pinpoint what first memories were. I think the earliest clear memories I have are more of actually going to camp rather than church itself. I kind of have this distinct memories of camp where I'm convinced I was 4 years old. I don't know if I was 4 years old, but in my memory I was 4 years old and doing various things and getting involved in probably things I was too young to be getting involved in, and I was just getting in the way, but I remember that quite clearly. Church itself, I can't say there's a particular early memory other than it. Well, I think probably the thing that sticks in my mind most is we were always late. As a child until I left for uni, we as a family went to Hemsworth Gospel Hall, and I just got this abiding memory of every Sunday without fail. We'd set off late. We'd get there probably about 10 minutes late, and there'd be the same argument between my mum and dad on the way there, that she was just, we just can't go in late, we're always late, and she hated it, and yet every week it was always the same, we're always late. And strangely, as I think about it, we sat in the worst place, because it was one of those, as a lot of churches are, where everyone sat in the same seat every week, and we'd have to walk in at the back right the way to the other end of church, past everybody, in order to get to our seats. So we couldn't even discreetly just sneak in at the back. So that's some of my earliest memories of church. I'm not really sure what I wanted to do at the age of 10. I've got this vague memory of being about 6, and on my birthday, the bin men coming to collect the bins, and me getting excited that they were doing that on my birthday, and so for a few weeks that was my dream to be a bin man, because it was like it was meant to be. I think I quickly grew out of that though. I think probably the one thing that, and even still to this day, that I would have probably had this dream of doing would be like an astronaut going into space. Going to the moon would be amazing. Or now I guess it would be going to the space station. Just the wonder of looking down at the Earth. Still to this day sometimes, particularly when there's a big full moon, I'll look up at the moon and kind of like just amazed at the fact that men have stood on there, and that I think that would have been always my one dream, to be an astronaut. It didn't happen. I think, like a lot of people seem to have said, I'd probably say I was quite a boring teenager. I think partly that was because I actually got through any kind of, or most of my rebellious stuff before I was even a teenager. Like age about 7 or 8, I got hanging around with some kids that were quite a bit older. I'll say that. I mean, they're probably only 12, 13, but for a 7, 8-year-old, and so there was a little phase of being a bit rebellious then. But as a teenager, I was relatively well behaved. I actually had quite a temper as a teenager, which I got to about 18 and it disappeared. And I think probably other than George, not many people have seen me lose my temper since then. I didn't dislike school. I was fortunate enough to be quite good at most subjects and didn't have to work very hard, and so I didn't work very hard. I kind of just did enough to not get into trouble. Played a lot of sport. I was in the football team, rugby team, cricket team, and was outraged that I wasn't allowed to play football on a Sunday. I remember there was a while where that really kind of like bothered me, but soon got over that. And read a lot. I would read a lot. If I wasn't out with my friends just on the bikes or something, then I'd probably be at home reading a book. So quite boring. Sorry. So I didn't become an astronaut, as you're probably well aware, and so since leaving uni, too many years ago again, I've kind of been working in various areas of software development, which I wouldn't have said I was ever particularly into computers, and certainly when I was leaving, I did a degree in maths and I was applying for jobs, accountancy, actuary, things like that you kind of would naturally go into. And I just happened to drop on something which was convenient. It was in Wakefield, where I was living at the time. It was handy, so I went along, got the job, and was my first introduction to, I was computer programming at the time, and since then I was there for about 10 years, and I moved to the company where I am now, and I've done various things since I've been there, through programming and software testing, and most recently I'm currently in the middle of a master's degree to become a data scientist through the company, so that this time next year hopefully that'll all be done and dusted with, and that'll be kind of where I'm at then. So if I could just have one meal every day, starter, main and dessert, it's very tempting to say bacon starter, bacon main, bacon for dessert, and I think I would probably die happy and probably quite young if I did choose that. But I think if I was to have a more sensible meal, there's so many things I could choose, but probably something like Yorkshire pudding with a nice onion gravy for starter. And then for main, tempting to say steak, but I think actually a proper, it's going to involve Yorkshire pudding again, but proper a roast beef, roast potatoes, cauliflower cheese, a nice roast beef Sunday dinner with some nice Yorkshires again, and a nice proper gravy. And for dessert, I'm more. A lot of people so far have said, "Oh, don't bother with starter. They prefer to have dessert." But if anything, I'd be the other way. I'd have 2 starters and no dessert. But I guess if I was to have a dessert, cheesecake's usually a good shout. Yeah, so I think that'd be me. Now, I had to think about whether I even had a favourite Bible character. I'm not sure it's something I'd ever really thought about. I guess there's all the likely contenders, your Moseses and your Davids and your Josephs, Paul in the New Testament. But thinking about it, there's been one character that's always fascinated me a little bit, and that's Jonah. And I think not because he's a great role model, like many of those others are, but actually it's the picture you get through Jonah of actually how God can work through our lives, even in our inadequacy and reluctance to do anything. He runs the other way, even when through quite drastic measures he gives in to going and doing what he's been asked to do. He puts the least amount of effort into it. He makes it pretty clear that he doesn't agree with what he's been asked to do. He's not happy about it, and yet even so, God does amazing things. And I think there's often we feel like we're nobodies and we can't do anything. And I think I've just always liked that picture of it's not about our abilities or how good or even how hard we try sometimes. God can still do amazing things through us if we just even sometimes when we just put the barest effort in. It just means doing that much and not running away from it. So, how did I come to know Jesus as my saviour? I guess having gone to church from being a baby, as a child growing up, I've been to Sunday school, I've been sat in all the meetings, I'd been to the Bible campaigns and I'd been to camp, and I'd heard the gospel message over and over again. I kind of knew on a kind of sort of a simple level what everyone needed to do to be able to go to heaven, and I guess as a child that's how you think of it, but I'm not sure I really felt any urgency. I think because it was something we heard week in, week out, it's just something you perhaps take for granted a little bit. But I do remember the morning I was saved. I was 9. It was a Sunday morning. I think it was the 1st of September, but it might not have been. And I'm not sure why I was thinking about it, but the recollection I have of it is that all I could think about was if Jesus returned, all my family would go, my mum and dad would have gone, and I would be left behind, and I didn't want to be left behind. And that was kind of the trigger at the time. As I say, I was only 9, and being a fairly quiet child, from what I remember anyway, I didn't really tell anybody. I just kept it to myself and didn't really do anything about it. And I guess whilst that was the point at which I would consider I was saved, I guess my life didn't really start changing. I didn't really start doing anything particularly active about it until I'd actually was much older, and I'd left for uni, and I was going to a different church, My first year at uni, I was in Birmingham, and I went to a church called Charlton Road Gospel Hall, and it was very similar to Hemsworth, where I'd growing up in many ways, the formats of the meetings and the style and everything, but the church itself, the people were just so different, and it just kind of opened my eyes, and that's kind of where it kind of really started for real, if you like. How has my faith helped me outside of church? I guess, and I'm sure we're all well aware of this, being a Christian in no way makes you immune to trials and troubles and difficult times. And I think one thing I've always felt is when going through those difficult times, it's like, if I didn't have my faith, if I didn't have Jesus, if you like, I don't know how people get through. People who are non-Christians anyone out there who thinks life is just your life and then you die and there's nothing. I don't know how you get through those difficult times. It's kind of an incredible comfort to it, and I know one thing that's been said to me often, is that I've worked with people who've sometimes seen some of the things that I was going through at the time, and they felt like they struggled to cope with seeing me go through it worse than the way I'd coped going through it, and they've seen in me that there's something there which helps you to go on and helps you through those situations, and absolutely it does. And I don't know. I don't know how. Like I say, I don't know how people cope. I don't know how I would have coped with all the situations I faced in my life without that faith. It kind of is a rock that keeps you going. So my go-to Bible verse. There are many I could have picked, but I guess there's one that's always kind of stands out to me, and in lots of situations. And it's not one verse technically; it's 2.5 verses, but I'm going to go with it anyway. And that's 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 16 to 18, and it's the first half of verse 18, I guess. And it just says, "Rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances." And I think the reason why those verses I keep going back to is just the such simplicity there. It's 9 words, depending on what version you read them in, and yet for something so simple sounding, there's actually a real challenge there to kind of meet that expectation. Because verse 18 says that those things are what God wills for us in our lives, and but actually achieving those things in reality is often quite difficult. So I think those verses are kind of stand there for me just as an ongoing challenge to the way I go about my life.